You're not using it. Mom, just give it to us already." The words didn't come from a place of desperation. They came from entitlement. And they echoed louder than the clinking wine glasses, louder than the awkward coughs and forced laughter surrounding me at that long, white-draped table. It was supposed to be a celebration, my 71st birthday. A Sunday brunch at the Lakeview Country Club, my son Michael's idea. Mind you, he made the reservation, ordered my favorite lemon custard cake, even sent out an invitation email with "Let's make it special for Mom" in the subject line. But this wasn't special, this wasn't sweet, this was an ambush. Michael sat at the head of the table, his new role since his father passed. And beside him, perched like a trophy, was his wife Angela, always polished, always watching, one hand resting dramatically over her belly like a Hollywood actress mid-reveal. I blinked. The air felt thicker than the cream in my coffee, across the table. My cousin Marlene froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Beside her, my sister-in-law looked away, eyes suddenly fixed on the tablecloth's floral pattern. Even the server, God bless her, paused mid-step. Pretending she hadn't just heard my son speak to me like that, but I heard, everyone did. "I mean, it's not like you need 2 bedrooms anymore," he went on. His tone was almost casual, like we were discussing weather, not the roof over my head. "We've got the baby coming, that place is perfect, and hey, you'll be fine. Maybe you could find a senior condo or something." Angela gave a little nod, lips tight, but pleased. Like this had all gone to plan. Like this wasn't a request. It was a foregone conclusion. I opened my mouth. But nothing came out. Not a protest. Not a question. Not even a breath. It was strange being erased in real time. He knew I lived in that apartment. He knew I'd been there for over 30 years. That every wall held photos I'd taken, every drawer, memories I hadn't yet packed. And still, he looked at me like I was just in the way. "You always say you want what's best for family," Angela added, patting her stomach like it gave her moral leverage. "Well, this is best. For everyone. Everyone but me, my grandson, Evan, 16. Silent, and surgically attached to his phone, chuckled. "Grandma in a retirement home. That'd be hilarious." The table broke into polite laughter, the kind of laughter people use when they don't know where to look, when the silence is too loud. I gripped the napkin in my lap. I wanted to cry. Not because I was hurt, though I was. Not because I was angry, though that, too. I wanted to cry because something inside me cracked. Not a snap. Not an explosion. Just a quiet, permanent break. Still. I smiled, nodded, lifted my glass like I was toasting to the next chapter. Only I wasn't. I was saying goodbye to something. To someone. Maybe to the idea that I was still needed. Still respected. I blew out the candle on my cake without making a wish, and when I looked up, I caught the eye of someone across the room. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, clearing a nearby table. She paused, one hand holding a tray, the other resting on her apron. Our eyes locked. She didn't look away. There was no pity in her gaze, no confusion, only quiet recognition, like she'd seen it before, like she knew what it felt like to be dismissed by your own blood. I gave her the smallest nod, then I turned back to my son and said softly, "I see." I wasn't always this quiet. There was a time my voice filled a home, not just a room. A home. A little 2-bedroom walk-up in the Bronx, with peeling wallpaper and a stubborn kitchen faucet that hissed like it held a grudge. That was where Michael took his first steps. Where I used to sit on the edge of his bed with a warm washcloth and stories about brave little boys who fought dragons. He'd grip my hand like I was his whole world. And for a long time, I was. It was just the 2 of us after his father left. No goodbye. No note, just a cold silence over morning toast and an empty closet that night. I remember standing in that kitchen, staring at the unpaid rent notice on the counter. Michael was 5. Too young to understand betrayal. Too young to realize how fast love can vanish when it's not real. But I did. And so, I worked. I worked until my hands cracked and my back felt like glass. Day shifts at the grocery store, night shifts cleaning medical offices, on weekends. I'd braid hair for neighborhood girls at $10 a head. Every dollar went into two things: rent and Michael's future. I wore shoes until the soles gave up, said no to birthday parties and new coats, but never once said no to Michael's field trips or his dreams. He wanted to play the trumpet. So I found a used one at a pawn shop and polished it till it looked like it belonged to Carnegie Hall. I remember the night I sold my engagement ring. It had been tucked away in a sock drawer for years, not because I was sentimental, no. I wasn't that naive. But because there was a part of me that thought maybe, just maybe, Michael would want to use it one day, for someone he loved, someone who'd love him back the way he deserved. But one semester of college books cost more than I'd saved. So I slipped that ring into a velvet pouch, walked 3 blocks to the pawn shop, and traded it for a cashier's check that bought him chemistry textbooks and lab goggles. I didn't cry, I just walked home slow, hands deep in my coat pockets, whispering, "He'll understand someday, even then." I believed that. I believed it when I turned down an invitation to join a local poetry class because the money went to his SAT tutor. I believed it when I moved into a smaller apartment so he could stay in the district with better schools. I believed it when I bought this very apartment we're fighting over now, scraping together every cent from a modest insurance payout and a small settlement from a workplace injury. Michael was already in college. I didn't tell him how close I came to choosing between heat and groceries that winter. Didn't mention the nights I'd sleep in socks and gloves just to save on gas. He was doing well, and that was enough. He came home one weekend during sophomore year. Tall, tired-looking, but beaming. He hugged me in the hallway, held on longer than usual, then whispered, "I'll make you proud. Mom, I promise. I'll take care of you someday." I still remember that. His breath smelled like cinnamon gum. He was wearing a faded sweatshirt with his college mascot, and for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine growing old with peace. Maybe, just maybe, I'd have someone to lean on later. Maybe he'd remember all I did. I didn't know back then that someone else would move into his heart and slowly start rewriting the script. Angela came into the picture during Michael's final year of undergrad. She was pretty, smart, ambitious in a way that didn't bother me at first. She brought me flowers the first time they visited and called me Miss Linda with a bright smile. I liked her, but something shifted after the wedding. She stopped calling me that, started calling me your mother, like I was an obligation, a bill to be paid, a side dish she hadn't ordered. They bought a condo out in Ridgewood, said it was just temporary, but I noticed how quickly Angela filled it with designer throw pillows and color-coded pantry jars every time they visited. She'd look around my apartment like it was a motel that hadn't been updated since the 70s. She once asked me jokingly if I'd ever thought of moving somewhere more age-appropriate. I laughed politely, but I knew then. She didn't see a woman who built a life. She saw a placeholder. Michael stopped noticing, stopped asking about my health, stopped staying for coffee after dinner, and yet I still smiled when they came by, still made his favorite lemon squares, still told my friends, "Michael's doing great, such a good husband, such a good man," because I believed that somewhere inside. He still was. It's funny how long we can convince ourselves we're not being forgotten. That loyalty is permanent, that love is earned and remembered, but sometimes the things you sacrifice the most for grow up to forget who paid the price. The first real crack didn't come with shouting, it came with silence. Weeks after the birthday brunch, Michael stopped calling. No check-ins, no "Hey Mom, how are you feeling?" Not even a forwarded photo of the baby's sonogram like he used to send when Angela still pretended to like me. I told myself they were just busy getting ready for the baby, busy trying to build a life. But I knew better. Something had shifted, and not slightly. I had gone from mom to that woman who lives in the apartment we want. Still, I kept my side of the street clean. I texted once or twice, baked a bundt cake, and dropped it off when I knew they wouldn't be home. I even knitted a yellow baby blanket and left it in their mailbox with a note, "Hope This brings a little sunshine to your nursery. No reply. Then, one Sunday, I got a text from Angela. Just a plain, tight-lipped message. Would you mind not dropping by without notice? It stresses Michael out. No greeting, no sign-off. No thank you for the blanket, just a digital cold slap to the face. I sat there staring at the message for a long time, like it would change if I blinked slow enough. I didn't respond. I didn't cry. Instead, I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured the rest of my tea down the drain. The room suddenly felt too small, like I was shrinking inside it. It didn't end there. A week later, I went to pick up my prescription. When I gave the pharmacist my insurance card, she frowned. It's coming up as inactive, turned out. Michael had quietly removed me from the family health plan. I called him. He didn't pick up. I called again, straight to voicemail, the third time. He answered, but only after I left a message that said, "If this is a mistake, please fix it. If it's not, I need to know why." He didn't apologize, didn't even pretend to be surprised. It's just temporary. Mom, we needed to restructure our expenses with the baby coming. I'll add you back later. Okay. Then he paused and added, almost like a footnote. You're still healthy. Right. I sat in the silence, breathing through it. My chest burned, but not from illness, from disappointment. I had spent decades making sure this boy, my boy, never had to feel cast aside. And here I was, an afterthought on a budget spreadsheet. Even then, I tried to let it go, but it wasn't long before the next blow landed. Thanksgiving came. I got a group email, not a personal invite, saying dinner would be held at Angela's sister's house this year. Just a small gathering, it said. We're keeping it intimate due to space. No address included. No, we hope to see you. I emailed back. No response. So I stayed home that year. Made myself a plate of stuffing and cranberry from the corner market. Watched the Hallmark marathon on mute and listened to the wind rattle the window pane. I was halfway through a second cup of cider when I got a photo on my phone. It was from Marlene, my cousin. The whole family gathered around a golden turkey. Smiles, wide. Michael at the head of the table. Angela beaming. Even Evan was there. My grandson. Carving the turkey with a grin. I wasn't just excluded. I had been erased. That was the moment I felt it. Not just sadness, not even betrayal. I felt invisible. I was a name they used for insurance forms, a number they needed to change on a deed. And I should have known, because just days later, Michael came by, unannounced. He let himself in with the spare key, one I'd stupidly never reclaimed. I was in the kitchen wearing my house robe and warming soup. Mom, he said casually, as if we'd just spoken yesterday. We need to talk. No apology. No checking how I was. Just, we need to talk. Angela wasn't with him, but her presence was there, stitched into every word he said next. I've been thinking, he started, eyes darting everywhere but my face. It makes sense. You know, for you to move out. Downsize. We could even help with the transition, get you into one of those senior places in the suburbs. He walked around the apartment as he spoke. Not like a son visiting home, like a buyer inspecting square footage. Angela's mom just did it, loves it, says it's like a cruise ship on land, lots of bingo. I didn't say a word. I just watched him trail his hand across the mantel where my wedding photo still sat. He didn't glance at it. Then he turned to me, almost like an afterthought, and said, you're still in good shape, but let's be honest, you don't need this whole place. The soup started to bubble over on the stove, but I didn't move. I just stood there, one hand on the counter, the other gripping the hem of my robe. It would have been easier if he'd yelled, easier if he'd cursed or blamed me. But this quiet eviction wrapped in faux concern, it was worse, much worse. He took a step closer, softening his voice. Think of it as making room for the next generation. I turned my back to him, not because I couldn't face him, but because I didn't want him to see the tremble in my jaw. I shut off the stove, poured the soup down the drain, and then, very calmly, I said, "Leave the key on the table." He hesitated. "Mom, come on, don't be dramatic." But I wasn't being dramatic. I was being done. The next morning, I sat in the armchair by the window, folder in my lap, the deed to the apartment in my name. Filed 21 years ago, never transferred, never promised. I ran my hand over the paper, slow and steady, and for the first time in a very, very long time, I stopped hoping he would change. The folder sat on my lap all night. I didn't sleep, didn't even try. I just listened to the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the radiator, the muffled sounds of the city outside. Inside that folder was the deed. Proof that the apartment was mine, legally, unquestionably, entirely. It was dated, signed, notarized 21 years ago. After I scraped together the insurance money and the leftover divorce settlement and bought this little patch of peace in my own name. I'd forgotten that. Or maybe I'd buried it, because part of me never thought I'd need to use it against my own child. But here I was, and for the first time since Michael's visit, I felt something stirring, not anger, not pride, clarity. The next morning, I got dressed with more care than usual. Slacks, a soft blue blouse, a light sweater, the kind of outfit I used to wear to PTA meetings when I wanted to look approachable but firm. Then I opened my phone and typed in a name I hadn't called in years. Carla Delgado, real estate agent, friend from church, and the only person I ever trusted with a house key when I traveled. She answered on the second ring, Linda. Her voice cracked with surprise. "Is everything all right?" I smiled softly. "Everything's finally getting there," I said. "Carla, I'd like to sell." The silence on the line stretched. Then she exhaled. "I'm listening." The paperwork took 2 weeks. Not because there were any issues. Carla was sharp, efficient, respectful. It was because I needed time. Time to sit with the truth. Time to breathe without guilt. Time to remember that I mattered too. The buyer was someone Carla knew, an older woman who'd been looking for a quiet place near the hospital where she volunteered. She fell in love with the space immediately. "I can feel the warmth in these walls," she said as she touched the windowsill. "This place has soul." She had no idea what those words did to me. For the first time in months, I felt seen. We signed papers 3 days before Christmas. I asked Carla to hold the announcement and the official turnover until after New Year's. I needed time to prepare, because I wasn't just letting go of a home. I was letting go of an illusion. On New Year's Day, I was invited reluctantly to Michael and Angela's annual brunch. I think they assumed I'd bring dessert and sit quietly in the corner like always. They had no idea. I wore the same soft blue blouse, brought a lemon custard tart, Michael's favorite, still warm from the oven, and tucked inside my purse, a fresh envelope, when I walked in. Angela looked surprised. She gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Glad you could make it," she said. Michael barely looked up from his phone. "Hey, Mom," I smiled, not the kind they expected. The living room was full. Angela's family, some neighbors, a couple of Michael's co-workers, all making small talk over champagne and casseroles. I sat near the edge of the group, quiet, polite, until Angela raised her glass to make a toast. "We're so grateful," she said, glowing like she was center stage, "for all the love, the support, and of course Mom's generosity. Soon, this year, we hope to finally move into a place that feels more permanent, somewhere we can really grow." Michael placed his hand on hers. They both smiled. Toward me, it was the cue. I stood up, slow and steady, cleared my throat gently. "If I may," I said, holding my glass, "I'd like to say a few words." The room fell quiet, more out of surprise than respect. I smiled at the faces I barely knew, then landed my gaze on my son. "You know, I used to believe," I began, voice soft, steady, "that if you sacrificed enough, if you gave enough, the people you loved would understand. Maybe even protect you in return." A few heads tilted, but sometimes. I continued, "They don't. Sometimes they forget you're a person. Sometimes they just see a set of keys and square footage." Angela stiffened. Michael gave a nervous chuckle. "Okay." Mom, I cut him off gently, lifting the envelope from my purse. I sold the apartment. You could have heard a fork hit the floor. What? Angela's voice cracked. Wait, what do you mean? Sold. Michael stood up. What are you talking about? You can't just... I placed the envelope on the table between us. It was mine, Michael, always was. Bought and paid for in my name long before either of you ever considered needing it. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Effective this Friday. I continued. The new owner will take possession. I'll be moving into a smaller place by the lake. One I chose. One where no one will ask me to shrink to make room for their comfort. Angela flushed crimson. But, the baby, our plans, she sputtered. I looked at her, really looked at her. I gave you my respect, my home, my peace. You gave me silence and spreadsheets. The room remained frozen. Then, one voice broke it. Evan, my grandson. He looked up from his phone, blinking. Wait, are you serious? You sold it. Just like that. I turned to him. Not just like that, I said gently. It took years of being left off invites, of being erased from family photos, of hearing my name turned into a burden. His face dropped. I thought you didn't notice that stuff, he mumbled. I smiled sadly. I always noticed. I turned back to the crowd, raised my glass, to reclaiming space, even if you have to build a new one from scratch. I didn't wait for applause. Didn't need it. I simply placed the lemon tart on the counter and walked out. The air outside was cold, but for the first time in a long time, it felt clean. By the time the papers were officially processed, I had already moved out. Carla helped me find a modest one-bedroom near the lake. Nothing grand. But it had a balcony just big enough for a rocking chair and a pot of lavender, and for the first time in years, it was mine. Not because I paid for it, though I did, but because it was free of expectations. The apartment sale closed on a Thursday. On Friday morning, Michael showed up at the old place. He had a key. Remember, still thought it gave him power. He walked right in. Angela followed behind, arms full of boxes, belly round with expectation, their new beginning. But instead of a welcome, they found a stranger. The new owner, Gloria, was in the kitchen unpacking glassware. She looked up, startled but calm. Can I help you? Michael blinked. Sorry. We're here to help my mom move in. She owns this unit. Linda Taylor. Gloria shook her head gently. I'm sorry, I purchased this apartment 2 weeks ago. From Linda Taylor. She doesn't live here anymore. Angela's voice sharpened. There must be a mistake. We were promised this space. She told us she'd leave it to the baby. Gloria smiled with surprising grace. Well, maybe she changed her mind. Michael stood frozen in the doorway. For the first time, he looked small, like a boy caught sneaking into the wrong classroom. He didn't yell, didn't make a scene, just turned to Angela and muttered, She sold it, Angela snapped. Sold it. To who? Why didn't you stop her? He said nothing, because he couldn't, because for all his assuming and demanding, he never once thought to ask what my name was doing on that deed, that night. I turned off my phone. I knew they'd call, and they did. 5 missed calls from Michael, 2 voicemails from Angela, 1 from an unknown number, probably Evan. Though he didn't leave a message, I listened to the second voicemail. Angela's voice was clipped, rehearsed. This was a really immature thing to do. Linda, we had plans. You've left us in a terrible situation. That word again. Left. As if I'd abandoned them. As if I hadn't been the one left out of every dinner. Every decision. Every holiday card. The next morning, I called my lawyer. A simple request. Update the will. Remove Michael and Angela from all inheritance. Set up a trust fund for a literacy program at the local library in my name. If they ever reach out, I told her, just let them know it's been taken care of, kindly, officially. She didn't ask questions, only said, You're not the first mother to do this. But I hope you're one of the few who does it with peace. I was. More than I expected. 3 weeks passed, then one afternoon, I stepped out of my new place to find Evan sitting on the bench by the front gate. He looked thinner, older, less sure of himself. I walked up slowly. "Shouldn't you be in school?" I asked. Half teasing. He shrugged. "They moved in with Angela's mom. It's cramped." I nodded. We sat in silence for a while. Birds chirped. A breeze rustled the dry leaves along the sidewalk. Then he said it. "I didn't know that they were pushing you out like that. I thought you just didn't like us anymore." I looked at him. "No. Honey, I stopped liking how I was treated. There's a difference." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." I smiled, because for the first time, I believed it. "You're still young," I told him. "You've got time to grow into someone better than both of them combined." He didn't reply right away, just looked down at his sneakers. Then, I found that baby blanket you knitted. It was still in our closet. Mom never used it. My breath caught. I did, for my cat. He grinned a little. And just like that, we were okay. Not perfect, not fixed. But okay. I heard Michael and Angela tried to get pre-approved for a new mortgage. Didn't go well. Michael's credit wasn't great. He'd taken out a second auto loan without telling Angela, and she'd maxed out a couple of cards decorating a home that was never hers. Word got around. Not from me. But you know how families talk. Angela's mother, who had always thought I was a bit cold, called to ask if I'd consider working something out for the baby's sake. I told her I already have. That child will grow up with a clean slate, and I'm no longer part of their mess. Justice doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it's just a door that stays closed, a dinner table that stays empty, a silence that feels like a full sentence. Michael never apologized. But he never tried again. And Angela. She found out the hard way that marriage is no guarantee of loyalty, especially when it's built on control and expectation. I don't know what happened to them next. And I don't need to, because I found something better than closure. I found peace. The new place isn't much to look at from the outside, just a small brick building near the lake, tucked behind a bakery and a flower shop that smells like tulips and old soil. But to me, it's everything. I hung a little wind chime on the balcony railing. Just one. It catches the breeze like a whisper, and when it sings, I remember what stillness feels like. There's no noise from upstairs, no keys jangling in the door when I'm not expecting them, no one rearranging furniture or questioning why I keep the teapot on the stove instead of hiding it away. Here, everything has a place, and so do I. Mornings are slow. I water the basil on the windowsill, make coffee, and read the paper cover to cover. Nobody interrupts me. Nobody sighs like I'm wasting time. I get to move at my own rhythm now, and on Tuesdays, I teach reading at the public library. It's mostly kids second graders with missing teeth and big questions. But sometimes an adult sneaks in too, someone brave enough to say, I never really got the hang of it. I sit with them one-on-one, no pressure, just patience. And when they finally get through a sentence without stumbling, I look them in the eye and say, "See, that's yours now." I don't tell them about the apartment, or Michael, or Angela, or the silence that grew like ivy between us, because this new chapter, it isn't built on bitterness, it's built on breath. Sometimes I still walk past my old street, not often, but once in a while, when I've got a full cup of tea in my thermos and know where I need to be. I'll take the long way home. I never linger, but I did once see Gloria through the window, standing in the same spot I used to stand in the morning sun. She was feeding her cat. Same bowl I left behind. Same yellow rug. I smiled. That home is no longer mine. But it still holds warmth, and that's enough. Evan wrote me a letter, handwritten. Said he was sorry. Said he was learning to see things from more than one angle. He told me he wanted to study social work, that he wanted to help people who fell through the cracks like you almost did. He didn't ask for anything, didn't beg for forgiveness, just offered honesty. And that was a start. I mailed him back a small package. Inside was the baby blanket I'd knitted years ago, with a note. For whatever you choose to protect one day. Let it begin with kindness. I know some of you watching. You've been here too. Maybe not the same story, but the same ache. That moment you realize your love has become a transaction, that your place at the table comes with conditions now, that the sacrifices you made were never remembered the way you hoped. I want you to hear this. You are not invisible. You are not too late. And you are not wrong for finally choosing yourself. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give your children is the example of boundaries, of dignity, of walking away when the love turns cold. And if that resonates with you, if you've ever had to reclaim your space or rebuild from silence, I want to know. Tell me in the comments. I'm listening. Others are too. And if someone in your life needs to hear this story, share it with them. Because healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, I'm still here, and I still matter. Now, if you haven't already, click subscribe. Not because you have to, but because stories like this, they find people who need them. And maybe next time, that person will be you.